Hey, how's it going? My name is Felix and welcome to the full release of Tiny Glade, and today we are going to be building a huge winter castle. Alright, to begin with, we are going to be doing terraforming first in order to get the general shape and idea of what I wanted this area to look like. And originally I did start off with I wanted a waterfall of some sort, and I thought that would have been really cool to have some sort of town or village surrounding it. And then I eventually figured out I can't build waterfalls in this game, and it is unfortunate that water, I think, can only be placed on the base level. So when you do terraforming, it is said just makes a giant hole of where the water would be rather than being placed on top of the terraforming. At least I think it is. That's when I was doing it. Maybe I was using the mechanic wrong, but at least that's what it seems like. So I was not able to build a waterfall, at least for this one. But regardless, I think that's honestly the spirit of Tiny Glade, where you make something, you may have mistakes here or there, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, the game is just so good at seamlessly connecting everything together. Those mistakes become new ideas, and then you just keep on building and building, and, you know, Tiny Glade is like a book report. You know the general topic of what you want to build, but you don't know where the introduction is and where to start, and then eventually you get the start and you start placing down buildings, and eventually it just keeps on coming. The ideas start flowing, and then next thing you know, it's 5 a.m. and I've completely lost track of time, and now there's a large castle in front of me. That to me is how Tiny Glade felt, and it's been such a fun game to play. Like, this is probably one of the best building games I've played in such a long time. And back to the build here. So I've just finished up putting a small house, and it was definitely, once again, that kind of thing where I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to build, so I was just working on the exterior or the landscaping around it before I finally decided to begin building a castle. And right now we're working on an entranceway. I knew that this is generally where I wanted the entrance for the castle to be, with a pathway going up. And looking at some reference pictures and trying to figure out the kind of style of castle I wanted to build, I eventually stumbled upon, I believe, a castle in Germany, and I thought it just looked so cool. It had that winter vibe to it, and it just looked so good. All I know is I don't know much history or the actual terminologies of castle, but the one I saw, I guess, was apparently built around the 11th century, and I thought it would be cool to build a castle that was more realistic and not the standard typical fantasy mythical style. And yeah, to be honest, I don't really know what makes the certain styles or the lingo of what makes a castle from a certain place different from another place. I was more or less just deciding that the castle will flow along the terrain here and just kind of match the top area that I built. And I think it just ended up turning out really well. Also, a big mistake I ended up doing, and if you want to avoid this mistake, definitely do it if you play Tiny Glade, where I did not change the color of the building until way later. And in this game, with the color palette tool, you can select the style of your building piece, and then when you add more building pieces onto it, it'll just copy whatever the first building piece was and its style and color. I should have done that, which is unfortunate now because everything was red right now, and then eventually I have to go in by hand and change everything later on, which I ended up doing. Definitely a good reminder to not make that mistake again. Now, right now, the castle is still flowing along and just following the terrain that I've built, but I didn't want it to be too long of a hallway, and occasionally I would also want to split things up, so we've got some sort of overhang hallway going on over there. But right here, wanted to make just another courtyard where, in my head, I can imagine some sort of soldiers or people of the castle could be practicing swordsplay. Maybe they've got test dummies or something over there, and just creating these other bits of the castle that just kind of give it a bit more shape rather than just being a long tube, because that's how it was feeling at first. Also, a thing I occasionally do whenever I make these entranceways that I really like right now, and it is figuring out the small mechanics of the game, is the fact that having an archway as the entrance, but you need pathways in order to create arches, and pathways can only be created on base level terrain or just on a terrain, and you can't do it on a foundation. So you have to have the building piece connected on the ground first and connect the pathway up to it, and then put a stone foundation underneath it. And that's definitely been a theme I am having right now in Tiny Glade, and especially building this castle, is just figuring out all the small mechanics and the hidden things that you can do and the tricks that you can figure out with the game. Now, I've reached the middle part of the castle, or I guess what we would consider the huge central area and the massive big courtyard. I don't know what it's typically called on a big castle, where whenever you see a castle, they have the big tower in the middle that, you know, you can see, typically probably where they have the throne room or something, or the grand hall. And that is what ended up being here. Now, it took me a bit to figure out what I really wanted to do with that. So we definitely left this like a general idea, and just like normal, you know, sometimes you just got to leave it the way it is and then come back to it once you actually figure out what you really want to do. We're going to continue along and build some more pieces. Definitely what I'm mainly focusing on right now is just getting the exterior of the build done, not really putting in any detailing, not yet anyways, that will come later. And eventually, so occasionally I just get random ideas, and you'll see me just like flip-flop on a building piece, but then I'm like, oh wait, that'd be really cool to build there. So I started using more of the walls as and archways to build some balconies, which I think is really neat. And then I wanted to make more use of the circular build piece, because I've been definitely using a lot of the squares. So trying to incorporate that as well into the build to also just give me a bit more shape. And then another neat trick you can do is having some trim along this way. It also just hides some of the clipping that is going on whenever you do combine some of these building pieces. So sometimes you'll want to try and figure out some detailing in order to hide that. Once again, making some more of the archways and just using that mechanic of making the archway where the build piece is connected to the ground, and then building it with a pathway, and then just hiding it with another foundation piece. Now, this is definitely one of the things that I'm not the biggest fan of, and you will see it a lot where I'm putting down these foundations because I would like a foundation underneath the whole castle and having some stone pieces, but these aren't really foundations. They're more or less the square building house piece, but scrunched down and flattened out, and it works, and you can make an entire platform essentially, but as you can see, it's not exactly fully flushed together, and it's trying to shove some squares together, but they don't really connect. It's like you have the wrong puzzle pieces essentially, and you're just trying your best to make something out of it. So probably just something that is my own problem or complaint, but I definitely think that it could be more intuitive and having legitimate foundation pieces that connect up rather than trying to just merge all the tiny squares together. Continuing on by working on the rest of the buildings near the entrance, one thing I wanted to focus on in this area, because all the buildings on the right side are very similar and their heights are generally the same, I wanted to not do that on the entrance and try and provide a whole slew of different kinds of buildings, as well as making sure we have huge height differences, so it just looks a lot more interesting, as well as providing some more entrance ways. I think a lot of these will end up turning into balconies, and just the area around and outside the castle, especially around the central part of the castle, which is where we're at right now. I knew that this is going to be the height of the highest point of the castle, the big grand thing that you like see off in the distance and probably view it from very far, and just figuring out how I wanted that to look. But we are now going to be working on some of the areas outside and around, and especially those entranceways I had, trying to make some more walkways and providing the platforming that goes around a castle, making sure the back of these buildings isn't completely flat, because they are just squares right now, and that is something to always focus on whenever you're building things like this, is try your best to unflatten or unsquare large surfaces. And you know, just generally always a good rule of thumb to add some depth into your builds is just remembering to look at any areas that are just super flat and trying to figure out what can I add onto that to give it more detail. So in the middle of the central, I guess, building, whatever these towers are, I ended up going with the idea instead of just one main central tower, which we still have, which is the huge hub. I decided it'd be cool to have two and then connect them up later, but this is also the point where I think this starts to really look like a castle, is adding these circular towers. I think sometimes they're called turrets or something. Maybe that's the one castle term I know. Yeah, these circular towers start to really give it the castle feel and just makes it feel so much more grand. I'm also wanting to add in just various points of interest onto the castle, just things that you would recognize, and they would probably have some important names that would be part of the castle. So building a tower here, I knew I wanted something on this corner that would just stand out and be a huge focal point. And also, it's just one of those super big, large towers on top of a castle. And here is the point where I had to end up recoloring everything. Not gonna go through all of that because it was just me going by hand to each piece I've had to place so far and recolor them. Just definitely a thing to remember next time to not make that mistake. But I also wanted to add some more detailing and bits onto one of the main structures over here. And I think it was just pretty cool to add some extra towers on top. And this is going to be the point where things just go a little crazy because I started to put windows, and this is where the real nitty-gritty detailing comes in. And it's just, I went a little window crazy. If I saw a surface that had nothing on it, I was like, all right, let's put a window on there. And that's just kind of what happened here, just finding places to add doorways and stuff. And it's still just so cool how the decorations and all the bits just come in naturally and really makes the place feel so much more lived in and detailed, and I just love it. Now, there are some weird things I've noticed in the full release where sometimes you do have to make sure you're getting the right decorations. There's a really weird one where when you put a window down, there will be like a sign or something. It's one of those pathway signs. And yeah, those are not something I want to see in the middle of my castle or on a balcony. So sometimes you just have to be paying attention to what decorations are coming in. Also, sometimes you get those clotheslines, and with how many windows I had, sometimes they connected up pretty weirdly, or you'd have clotheslines just going all the way across the castle. That was very interesting looking. This part started to take the longest, I think, after building the exterior. It really is just finding whatever surface I can find that needs a window or some detailing. And then I also finally turned at nighttime so I could get a look of what the castle looks like at night, and it just became so beautiful. And we're also putting the lanterns around, trying to find ways to light up the area and just also keep it a bit realistic where you would have lanterns along the path. And just everything right now is starting to light up, and the castle is starting to just feel so much more vibrant and I think alive. It's just, this is so good looking to me. I just love this game, and it's just been so much fun doing all this, even though right now just going crazy with the detailing. Also, another really cool thing they added in this release are chimneys, and the fact that the chimneys have smoke coming out of them. It just made the winter vibe so much more alive, and really does just make it look like there are people in this castle and they're living here and things are happening. I just, you know, that's all I need now, is just some sort of way to have little tiny people in the castle, maybe moving it about, or just like horses or something. Just really something to make it not so much as empty. But regardless, I think it all just looks really good anyways, and that's just something probably even way out of scope. Right now, just making some more finishing touches. Once again, just had some really flat areas, so just wanted to add some more detailing onto that. Also, finding out some surfaces where I can maybe add some more balconies and things. Then I also figured out how to add like wooden railings. It's always when I come back and I actually figure out a mechanic or something, because I actually didn't know how to do that for a while, was that a wood railing is just one of the styles whenever you make a balcony. So that was cool to figure out. And then, you know, you finally find a mechanic, and then you start to go back around and see where you can put it all. And you're like, oh, what can I put it there? Can I put it there? And that's just what I've been doing at this point on the castle, is making small changes here and there as I just figure things out along, especially like making these balconies along and these kind of pathways. But pretty much I am done with the main castle itself. There's probably still going to be small parts where I just keep coming back and I'm like, oh, I could add something there, and eventually I just need to stop and move on. So right now, working on the rest of the map, essentially, and all the areas around it, I wanted to build a bridge that was in the river, or I guess leading into the lake, and just figuring out to using some foundation for floors and then using the walls, which just worked out a lot better for me to be able to have the arches in it. And then you can also make your own staircases, essentially, with walls, because the flooring piece is essentially not low enough to actually have stairs. They try to spawn doors and you need staircases, so sometimes you just have to make your own. And lastly, just wanted to make another house out here to be having some more houses, I guess, just in the wilderness. And this one has a small personal graveyard, which is kind of sad. I do like thinking that there are some more personal stories within the build, and that's just part of it, right? So I love it. Anyways, I think with that, we're now going to jump back into live view and let's take a walk around the build and the castle. Alright, so this is the finished version of the castle. At least I'm going to say finished, because every time I turn the game back on, I just want to keep adding more, and I just always see something else I could add onto the castle. Like, even when I turned the game on just now, I actually figured out you can put the banners on the walls, which there is some at the entrance, and then I started wanting to do that. So, can't be here forever. So we'll just take a good look from the sky of the finished castle, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. Also, at the end of this video, after this part, I am going to give you a full walkthrough in the first-person cam of the inside and the interior of the castle. But for now, we just get to spin around, take a good look at it. I can't wait to build more. This game is just so amazing and definitely worth to give it a try. And then the best thing of this game is just the fact that you can do the passage of time and just kind of go through and see everything light up, go to night, and then back to morning, and it is just so good. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, consider dropping a like on this video and subscribing. This is going to be it for me, but if you do stick around, there will be a full walkthrough of the interior of the build after this. My name is Felix, and I hope to catch you again next time.